Christine didn't hold back her frustration. "You're behaving like some grumpy old man again," she snapped at Valentine. He shot back with a smirk. "What, would you rather I act like some moody teenager?" Their age gap was starting to feel more like a canyon than a crack. Christine had just passed 30, while Valentine had stepped into his 40s. After 5 years of marriage, things had begun to lose their spark. Christine, who still craved lively nights out, longed for dance floors, buzzing clubs, and the pulse of live music. Valentine, on the other hand, had grown fond of quiet evenings and early bedtimes. Their tastes, once complementary, now clashed like mismatched puzzle pieces. Christine hadn't been working for a while. She lived comfortably off the rent from her apartment, while Valentine shouldered the rest. In the beginning, she splurged the income on herself, upgrading her wardrobe, buying shiny new gadgets, and sometimes asking Valentine to chip in when her spending got out of hand. When the last tenants were preparing to move out, Valentine didn't hesitate to help. But then something shifted. Christine started vanishing for hours at a time. She'd say she was just catching up with friends or grabbing coffee somewhere, but she often didn't come home until after Valentine did. When he gently asked where she'd been, she brushed it off with, "I need some time to myself, you know? I was with Helen." Still, the change in her behavior gnawed at him. One day, while handling paperwork at a notary's office coincidentally located in the same neighborhood where Christine's apartment was, Valentine felt an odd pull. Maybe it was instinct or just a nagging curiosity, but something made him wander toward her building. Looking up, he spotted light spilling out of the apartment windows. That shouldn't have been the case. The place was supposed to be empty. Unable to shake the unease, Valentine climbed the stairs and gave Christine a call. "I'm cleaning the apartment," she said casually. "Oh, perfect. I'll come up and give you a hand," he replied, and moments later knocked on the door. What greeted him caught him completely off guard. Christine opened the door with a startled expression, and behind her sat a young guy, maybe in his early 20s, flipping through a book at the table. A pair of men's sneakers by the door immediately raised red flags. Valentine's chest tightened. Every alarm bell in his head went off. He was seconds away from confronting her. Before he could speak, the young man stood and calmly introduced himself. "This is my brother, Max. He got kicked out of his dorm and asked to crash here until he finds somewhere else. That's why I'm not renting the place right now," he explained, stepping forward and offering his hand. Valentine, momentarily stunned, hesitated. The explanation felt too convenient, but he didn't have time to untangle it just then. He had work to get back to, so he decided to shelve the questions for later. That evening, over dinner, he brought it up again, circling back to the mysterious brother in the apartment. Christine gave a small sigh and tried to sound matter-of-fact. "My husband's suspicion makes sense," she said. "I never mentioned my brother before, and technically, he's my half-brother. Dad had a whole other family after divorcing Mom. So yeah, Max is my brother, just not in the conventional sense." Valentine didn't quite buy what Christine had told him, though he did his best not to show it. There was something off about the fact that she never once mentioned having brothers before, and the whole brother living in the apartment, that didn't sit right either. He remembered the chat he had with his father-in-law at their wedding, the one where they swapped numbers. It seemed like the perfect time to dig a little deeper. He dialed Nicholas's number, casually asking how he was, and then slyly dropped the topic of his supposed son into the conversation. But to his surprise, his father-in-law's response was a little unexpected. "Christine, I only have one child. You must have misunderstood," Nicholas said, his voice laced with confusion. That was all Valentine needed to hear. His suspicion had just morphed into full-blown certainty. Christine had lied. The next day, Valentine decided to take a different approach. He left work early, planning it perfectly so he'd be home just in time to catch Christine leaving to see her friend. Sure enough, the lights were on in her apartment, and he saw this as his opportunity to confront things head-on. He knocked, greeted Max with a friendly smile, and pretended like everything was totally normal. "Hey, Max, Chrissy told me you're studying to be a doctor," Valentine said, as if they had already had that conversation 100 times. Max offered a weak nod, clearly unsure of where this was going. Valentine leaned in a little, lowering his voice as if sharing some big secret. "She's one strong woman, your sister. I can't see her asking anyone for help. But hey, if you know anyone who can assist her, She's been fighting this nasty thing for a while now, some unpleasant infection she can't shake. I'm sure she'd be grateful for any recommendations. Max's face drained of color, his eyes wide with shock. Valentine gave him a reassuring pat on the shoulder, chuckling lightly. Don't worry, he added with a grin. You won't catch it from the plates. Max, looking both flustered and horrified, stood up slowly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Without another word, he grabbed his backpack from the couch and started packing in a hurry. I need to go, he muttered under his breath, avoiding eye contact as he stuffed his things into his bag and bolted out of the apartment. Valentine sat back at the table, unable to hold back a loud laugh. Oh man, the clinic's receptionist is gonna have a field day when this kid storms in, begging for a test for his wife, he said, his amusement palpable. Rather than making a grand scene, Valentine decided to keep things simple. He calmly gathered up all of Christine's belongings, tossing them into bags and placing them in the hallway. When Christine came back from her friend's place and stepped into her apartment, she didn't immediately grasp what was happening. Valentine, are you doing some kind of deep cleaning? She asked, still oblivious to the bags scattered around. Yeah, just a little pre-cleaning, he replied, his tone cool. I've emptied out your apartment. Thought it might be fun to give it to 10 broke college kids. Although, after everything that went down, I'm guessing they'll keep their distance. If I were you, I'd lay off the wild parties for a while. Christine stood frozen, her mind struggling to process his words. It gradually dawned on her when he mentioned that he had called her father to discuss the situation with his brother. It was then that she realized that her secret affair with a young man had been discovered. Since she had nowhere else to turn, she had no choice but to move into her modest apartment. But it didn't take long for her to realize the bitter truth. Without Valentine's financial help, she wouldn't have been able to pay for her luxury lifestyle on her own. Desperate to regain her independence, she dove into job hunting. But after so much time away from the workforce, finding something quickly proved to be much harder than expected. Feeling the pressure, she found herself looking for another benefactor to support her. Unfortunately, that didn't go as planned either. Word had already gotten out among Valentine's friends, and no wealthy man wanted anything to do with her now.